and music of the band. These pre-recorded vignettes ran practically every hour during Genesis Week, and our listeners really enjoyed them. We thought you would too. So here they are, the Genesis vignettes from our Genesis Week on WLUP, Chicago's Loop.
The Loop 98 celebrates Genesis Week with music and historical information. Genesis was formed by Peter Gabriel back in the 1960s. The group came together out of a mutual interest in songwriting, which they discovered they shared during their days at the Charterhouse Public School in England. The original lineup consisted of Gabriel, Michael Rutherford, Tony Banks, and Anthony Phillips. After their days in school, John Mayhew was added to the band on drums, and Peter Gabriel stepped from behind the drum kit to assume the responsibility of vocals. A similar step would be made years later by yet another Genesis drummer. In the late 60s, Genesis came to the attention of Jonathan King, who was himself a singer and record producer. King produced their first album, From Genesis to Revelation. It was issued in 1969, but failed to capture the interest of the public. The debut album, From Genesis, was eventually reissued in 1974 under the title In the Beginning. Now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. After the less than positive reaction to their first album, Genesis was on the verge of breaking up. They stayed together, however, and endured a period of uncertainty and broken promises. It wasn't until Tony Smith, head of the famous Charisma label, took out an option on the band that Genesis took the first real step towards the greatness that would eventually follow. They headed into the studio and emerged in 1970 with Trespass. The album held moments of sparkle, but more importantly, it simmered with a presence that aptly suggested the potential of Genesis.
My life is about to begin. Tell me that I'm a hero. Promise me all of your violent dreams. Light up your body with anger. Now, in the sunny world, it's time to destroy this evil. Now, when I give a word, get ready to fight for your freedom. Now!
Following the release of Trespass, John Mayhew and Anthony Phillips both departed the band. Two new members of Genesis were found in the persons of Phil Collins and Steve Hackett.
Stand up and fight, for you know we are right. We must strike at the lies that are spread like disease to our minds.
And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Nursery Crime, the third Genesis album, marked the recording debuts of new members Phil Collins and Steve Hackett. Released in 1971, the album reflected the beginning stages of the lush musical textures that would eventually be woven into their distinctive style. You can hear the potential of Genesis in the finely blended original recording of the musical box, which opens the album. Perhaps more importantly, the tour that followed the release of Nursery Crime showed why Genesis would someday stand head and shoulders above the rest. It was during this tour that the group began to experiment with the visuals and theatrics upon which they would found their reputation. It was at this time that Peter Gabriel, outfitted in an outrageous wardrobe of theatrical costumes, assumed his role as focal point of the band. Genesis was indeed something completely different than rock audiences had experienced before. And the best was yet to come.
You stand there with your mixed expression, casting doubt on all I have to say. Why don't you touch me? Touch me! Why don't you touch me? Touch me! Touch me! Now! 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 Now!
Now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Genesis released Foxtrot in 1972. The album marked their first entry onto the British charts. The album's public acceptance and relative commercial success was centered around two of the most memorable songs in the band's repertoire, Watcher of the Skies and Supper's Ready. Even today, the impact of the latter is such that you'll still hear cries of Supper's Ready at any Genesis concert you attend. Genesis released their first live album in 1973. Genesis Live was a recording of the British tour that the band had engaged upon from 1972 through early 1973. The album continued to enhance the group's growing reputation as seen in its chart success in England. With 2 well-received albums under their belts, Genesis returned to the studio, and before the year was out, they issued Selling England by the Pound. Across the sea in America, a cult of Genesis fans was beginning to grow as word of this remarkable group of musicians began to spread.
The sands of time, every road by, the river of constant change.
And now, Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. 1974 found Genesis with their reputation as a major band firmly intact, with the astonishing Peter Gabriel fronting this group of powerful and talented musicians. They released The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
And the lamb lies down on Broadway.
The music found in this concept album reflected a refinement of style seldom seen before in the world of art rock music. From the fine-drawn shape of carpet crawlers to the profound impact of the title song, this album captured the virtuosity of Genesis. The group followed the LP's release with their most impressively produced tour yet, with Peter Gabriel acting out the story of the album's lead character. The tour drew sellout crowds in England and simply amazed the American concert audiences. With tremendous acceptance finally theirs, Genesis, as they were in 1974, seemed like a band that had everything going for it. The music world then was more than startled when in 1975, Peter Gabriel announced that he was leaving the band to pursue a solo career. It seemed that the glory days were over when in fact, they were just starting. And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Sudden change can either be your greatest moment or your worst failure. It depends on where your talents lie. And there was a lot more talent in Phil Collins, Michael Rutherford, Tony Banks, and Steve Hackett than most people dared to dream. Genesis repeated its own history when once again the drummer strode center stage and took the mic. Phil Collins commanded the lead vocals task with such overwhelming self-confidence that even the most cynical of critics was convinced. A Trick of the Tail displayed the heart of Genesis' musical sense and style on such songs as Dance on a Volcano, Robbery, Assault and Battery, and Squonk. It won consistently excellent reviews and grabbed considerable American radio airplay. Time would show that Genesis was just heating up.
No horns and they got no tail. They don't need no of our resistance.
And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. And Then There Were Three was the first album from Genesis as a trio. It was also the album that gave them their first real taste of commercial success. The album contained their first top 10 single in Follow You, Follow Me.
Follow you, will you follow me? The days and nights that we know will be. I will stay with you, will you stay with me? Just one single tear in each passing year there will be.
The 11 songs found on the album were shorter in duration than anything else previously released by the band. And Then There Were Three also gave Genesis their first consistent American radio airplay, and the album went gold in the U.S. Prior to the 1978 release of the album, the critics and cynics again said that Genesis was through Without Steve Hackett, how could they continue? And then there were three proved that three musicians was more than enough. And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Duke was the 1980 offering from Genesis. It contained strong moments of music that hinted at the percussion-inspired sounds that would be created by them within the next few years. Turn It On Again and Misunderstanding made their way to the top of the charts, and the album went straight to #1 in England.
All I need is a TV show, and the radio.
It had been an interesting musical journey for the fans who had followed the band from the days of From Genesis to Revelations through Duke.
There must be some misunderstanding. There must be some kind of mistake.
Because Genesis had been so musically complex in the first place, when the band became a trio, it was important to their new identity to begin to strip the music back to the basics.
It's returned in my book.
And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Genesis released Abacab in 1981. The album thunders with an intensity that could only be the work of Banks, Collins, and Rutherford. Not surprisingly, Keep It Dark became an international hit single.
Keep it dark.
Abacab's mood swings and shifts from the title track through No Reply at All, Man on the Corner, Like It or Not, and on to another record. 2 years later, these songs remained fresh and dynamic.
It's funny, you know, 'cause there's no wrong moment, I know where to go. Who the lonely man there on the corner? It's been a long, long time since I held anybody, since I loved anyone.
Genesis hit the road for a tour that would take them across Europe and the U.S. following the release of Abacab. Their live dates were greeted with rave reviews and satisfied audiences. And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. This year we've been treated to yet another change of direction from Genesis. Their newest, self-entitled album is also the first time that the band has gone into the studio with no material prepared in advance. In a recent interview, Mike Rutherford recounts how engineer and co-producer Hugh Padgham let the tape roll as the band jammed.
I got a name, and I got a number, and I'm coming after you.
In these rough mixes, Genesis began to craft the material into the music found on the album.
But just as I thought it was going all right, I found out I'm wrong and I thought it was right. It's always the same, it's just a shame, that's all.
The songs are their meatiest to date, and after listening to it, one can only look forward with anticipation to what Genesis has in store for us next.
There's always a reason why it happened. You never did anything wrong, but it just seemed to fall apart. But you're taking it all too hard.
Now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. 1983 has brought the release of Genesis. The album is an interesting mix of the recent Genesis sound with moments both vocally and musically that reach back to the band's Gabriel-esque past.
'Cause you know, and I know, it's time for change.
Phil Collins' vocal styles continue to expand. Instrumentally, the band has never sounded better. Home by the Sea is an 8-minute piece that reflects the finer moments of Genesis as we know them today. Other standouts on the album include It's Gonna Get Better, That's All, and an unbelievable vocal workout from Phil Collins on Mama.
It's hot to watch from your mama, but I
Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Selling England by the Pound was released by Genesis in 1973. The album supplied the band with their first British hit single in I Know What I Like. The album continued to lend credence to the band's growing reputation. Perhaps the most consistent element in their success over the years has been Genesis' ability to tell such great stories in their songs. Bertha Fifth and The Cinema Show are songs from Selling England that reflect that attitude.
The path is clear, though no eyes can see. The course laid down long before.
The early 70s were highly productive growth years for Genesis. They would soon return to the studio and come back with their most ambitious album to date, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
And the lamb lies down on Broadway.
And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. In early 1977, Genesis hit the road in support of the Wind and Wuthering album. The tour took them through 45 North American cities. They also played Brazil, Paris, and England. A live double-set recording of that tour was issued in early 1977. It was called Seconds Out and had been recorded during 5 nights of sold-out shows in Paris. The album is a Genesis fan dream come true. It contains extended versions of Squonk, Los Endos, and a breathtaking rendition of Supper's Ready that encompasses one full album side.
Today's the day to celebrate the folk-made their fame.
The other highlights include Dance on a Volcano, plus The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which rolls right into the closing section of the musical box.
You stand there with your fixed expression. Why don't you touch me? Touch me. Why don't you touch me? Touch me. Touch me now, now.
Upon the release of Seconds Out, Steve Hackett left Genesis, and another important change was about to take place. Now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. 1976 was a busy year for Genesis. Not only did they release Trick of the Tail, but later that year came Wind and Wuthering. Beautifully written and performed, the musical highlights include 11th Earl of Mar and Your Own Special Way.
You have your own special way of holding my hand, kicking waves off the road, don't never let go.
Wind and Wuthering was an important addition to the Genesis catalog. It continued to solidify their standing in the music world as musicians of the highest caliber. Following the release of Wind and Wuthering, Genesis hit the road for an extensive tour. And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Three Sides Live was, as the title indicates, a double record set that contained one side of studio material and, as they say, 3 sides live. The concert performances were captured during the 1981 Genesis tour. There are some delightful versions of their work, including outstanding versions of Behind the Lines, Misunderstanding, and Turn It On Again.
Turn it on, turn it on, turn it on again. There must be some misunderstanding. Obviously there must be some kind of mistake.
The studio side is interesting from a collector's point of view, in that the American release contains different songs than what can be found on the import issue. The American album features such Genesis favorites as Paper Late, Me and Virgil, and You Might Recall.
Maybe when you're older and you're thinking back, well, you might recall. Now, did I act happy? Did I do right?
And now Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. Peter Gabriel's first post-Genesis album was released in 1977. It was the first of two self-entitled albums and drew rave reviews from music and Genesis lovers everywhere. The album contained the classic Salisbury Hill.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill, I could see the city light.
The music world would have to wait until 1980 for Peter Gabriel's second solo effort. It was well worth the wait. The album contained strong musical visions in songs like No Self-Control, Biko, and Games Without Frontiers.
If looks could kill, they probably will in games without frontiers, or without tears.
The album was produced by Robert Fripp. It was a bit more experimental in nature than Gabriel's first solo album and featured some great guitar work from Fripp. The next solo album from Peter Gabriel was called Security and contained the international hit single Shock the Monkey. The video which accompanies this song is a great avenue to display the theatrical side of Gabriel's music. Upon release of the album, he took to the road in support of it. The summer of 1983 gave us Peter Gabriel Plays Live. It's a double record set that features all the best of Peter's work. Included in the set is the first live recording of I Go Swimming.
I go swimming, swimming in the water, swimming in the river, swimming in the sea. I go swimming.
The album was well received both commercially and critically, and now here's music from Peter Gabriel as Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. The solo albums from Phil Collins have gained great critical and commercial success. While actively involved in Genesis, Collins has also worked with the jazz rock band Brand X and is a featured performer on 5 out of their 6 albums. His first strictly solo effort, Face Value, was released in 1981. The album went to number 1 in England and firmly entrenched Collins in the rock superstar category. The album is alive with strong melodies, great brass arrangements from Earth, Wind & Fire's horn section, and fantastic vocal work from Collins. Face Value is loaded with wonderful songs, including In the Air Tonight and I Missed Again.
Did I miss again? I think I missed again.
1982 gave us Hello, I Must Be Going. Once again, Collins blew everyone away with songs like I Don't Care Anymore, It Don't Matter to Me, Through These Walls, and Like China.
I'll be so careful, I'll hold you like China. I promise not to hurt you, I'll hold you like China. You won't feel nothing, I'll hold you like China. 'Cause I know it's your first time.
The music found on this album reinforced his rapidly growing international reputation. On the heels of the album's release, Collins hit the road in support of the LP. The tour brought him to Chicago's Auditorium Theater for an evening of intimate music that those in attendance won't soon forget. And now here's solo music from Phil Collins as Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. There was a time when a solo album from an individual member of a band almost certainly led to the breakup of the band. Such is not the case with Genesis. All the members of the group have released solo projects to find critical acclaim. Tony Banks has 2 solo albums to his credit. The first was released in 1979 and was called A Curious Feeling. 1983 brought The Fugitive, which contains the single This Is Love. Mike Rutherford also has come up with 2 solo projects. His first effort, Small Creeps Day, was issued in 1980. 1982 gave us Acting Very Strange, and also contained some great music, including the song Both Banks and Rutherford brilliantly display the individual talents and musical insights on their solo albums that they also bring to Genesis as a whole. Now here's more solo music from Tony Banks as Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop. There was a time when a solo album from an individual member of a band almost certainly led to the breakup of the band. Such is not the case with Genesis. All the members of the group have released solo projects to find critical acclaim. Tony Banks has 2 solo albums to his credit. The first was released in 1979 and was called A Curious Feeling. 1983 brought The Fugitive, which contains the single, This Is Love. Mike Rutherford also has come up with 2 solo projects. His first effort, Small Creeps Day, was issued in 1980. 1982 gave us Acting Very Strange, and also contained some great music, including the song Both Banks and Rutherford brilliantly display the individual talents and musical insights on their solo albums that they also bring to Genesis as a whole. And now here's more solo music from Mike Rutherford as Genesis Week continues on WLUP, Chicago's Loop.
To celebrate the return of Genesis to Chicago, we've been featuring their music all week long and giving you historical information about the band. Coming up, we'll have more free tickets to one of their shows this weekend at the Horizon and copies of the new self-titled album. All week, we're giving you the best of Genesis on WLUP, Chicago's Loop.